I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, and the time is 5:32 p.m. Item 2, board business. Actually, before I get into it, thank you everybody for coming in on a cold weekend, and thank you to staff for being here as well. I appreciate y'all sticking with us on this. So, item 2, board business. A, discussion and possible action regarding TEA corrective action plan related to board policy FNCE local. I know we've discussed this a few times. From the last meeting, we had asked Mr. Lopez to send a letter to TEA requesting some, clarification on, for lack of a better term, working with us on getting the policy either updated or some time for us to implement the policy should it change. And I think you all got a copy of that and TEA's response, which was the deadlines are the deadlines. In addition to that, bless you, Mr. Jarrett had provided to all of us a document that kind of showed what the current, how the schools within the district are implementing our policy, so that you could all kind of see from elementary schools through high school what each individual campus is doing. And for the record, no elementary schools are allowing cell phones in the school. So, and then middle school is a little bit of a mix here and there. For the most part, they don't use it throughout the day. And then high schools are mainly no cell phones during class time. And then during passing periods and lunch periods, they allow their kids to use it. And there's some variations within that. So I know we've talked about this quite a bit. But with the new information that we received, does anybody have questions or comments? Mr. Lopez is here to provide any clarification before we take any action or not. Ms. Cox? Sorry, I didn't see it. No, Ms. Landry and then Ms. Cox.
We also received from TASB the clarification on the policy as well.
Yes, thank you. We had Ms. Turner sent us all a copy of a document that was provided to us from TASB that was back in November. That, the summary of it ultimately said, local policy, you guys can craft the local policy as you want, but this is how we interpret it, which seemed to be in line with what TEA is kind of telling us that we need to do. So, anything else I forgot? Just wanted to get it all out there. Okay, Ms. Cox?
I was just going to ask, so we still haven't heard from TEA how we're out of compliance?
No,
right?
They did not respond. As you saw in the communications I received back from the agency, they just basically said, no, we're not going to give any additional time. It's just, we expect compliance.
Okay.
That was it.
Thank you.
Yes.
So in other words, TEA is actually trying to overwrite the legislature and a few of the legislators that, decided or took offense to our stance on this situation. And we are supposed to just bow, to the king and decide that we are going to just, give our authority away to people who do not live in our district. Is this what I'm understanding?
That is the expectation put in a nutshell of what TEA wants with the corrective action plan. Its position is that based on the input from the legislators, which I know you all have seen, that they believe that school days should be bell to bell. And so that's the way that now TEA is taking that position and saying that school districts do not have local control to make that decision, whether in partnership with their families or not.
Okay, let me just make sure. I do not want to, misspeak. Is there anywhere in that law that they wrote that says that?
That defines school day?
Defines, yes.
It does not, no.
Is
The
there
law does not.
anything in that law that states that we have the ability to define a school day?
if you go back and look at the information that we had provided in our initial response, we combined the fact that there are laws elsewhere in the education code that say that anything that is not specifically delegated by the legislature to the agency or the State Board for Educator Certification, that, or the State Board of Education, excuse me, that basically at that point, it becomes a matter of local control for local boards to exercise policy and to make decisions about what they want to do. And so that is what we have articulated to the agency and never really gotten a direct response on, other than they're saying, well, we're looking at school day as written in House Bill 1481 to mean bell to bell. But
So-
it's not defined anywhere that way.
So what you're saying is TEA is trying to interpret this law and hold us accountable, for what we have said, which is, we are going to allow parents and children to actually communicate during the time that is not counted as minutes. And to me, this seems like government overreach.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly make that argument, and that is an argument that we have made to the agency, but given sort of where we are with all this, from a posturing standpoint, from procedurally where we would be is really our resort now would be to end up in litigation with the agency over this issue, one way or another. And that's where it can become problematic because, again, even if down the road, and of course the board will make the best decision possible under the circumstances, but even if we get down the road to where we litigate this out and are successful, it is possible and likely, in light of what we've heard, that the legislature could go back in the next session, which would be this time next year, and make a correction to the bill to define what they want school day to mean in the bill, or write language into the bill in an amended version of it that would say that personal communication devices would not be permitted from bell to bell.
Are we the only, excuse me, are we the only district that they're attacking like this?
That's the only one that I'm aware of. If you all will remember, Alamo Heights also took a similar position to what Northeast did, and they received letters from legislators saying that it was meant to be a bell-to-bell bar, and of course they went ahead and changed their policy at that time. But as far as any other open investigations that the agency may have against other districts for this issue, I've not seen anything to that effect, but they also don't publicize that information. So at this point, I don't know whether they are going after anyone else at this time or not.
Frankly, I think this is a test case. I'm thinking that they're trying to see just how far they can push us. And if we give in to this at this time, it'll be something else next month and then something else the following month. It will always be something that they are going to push and push and push. And if we don't say no and do a solid no, and what we've already explained to our communities, that we are going to stand firm on this, and if we give even an inch to these people, TEA apparently believes that they can write policy and actually laws because they are not taking the letter of the law and they are not going by that. And they're not even giving you any sort of indication of what we have actually done wrong. So to me, this is it's a blatant abuse of power. They are trying to see just what they can get away with. And I feel like if we say and we bow to them, this isn't going to end here. It's always going to be something.
And Ms. Villarreal, I just want, and this is not to argue for or against TEA, the law does direct TEA to provide us guidance. However, the guidance to this day still says that school systems are to define school day and school property.
Well, that's great, but the fact of the matter is the law does not define this.
Correct, and so we have done that in our policy, is define what the school day is.
So my question is, are we going to stand firm on this, or are we just going to fold like a wet tissue paper and say, hey, TEA, just mow us over because we know you're going to mow us over again? And like I said, I have a horrible, horrible feeling that this is just a test case to just see how far they can push us.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Shelton?
Thank you for being here, Ms. Lopez. Two questions. Remind me again the deadline?
January the 30th is the deadline by which they want the policy to be revised in accordance with what they've directed.
Sunday? That's Sunday?
That's Friday, I think, next Friday.
Friday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
They had initially said December the 30th, but if you recall, because of the closure
Correct.
For holiday break, I asked them for an additional 30 days, and they did grant that.
Okay. And then what are our options? So what is it that we can do at this point?
Well, I mean, at this point, if the board decides not to make the change in accordance with the corrective action plan as directed by TEA, then we would notify TEA that we didn't make that change, and then from there, they would need to proceed forward with whatever it is they're going to do. They would issue what they call a preliminary report with findings, and they have the option of attempting to sanction the school district further for not complying with the corrective action plan.
What do sanctions mean or look like?
It could be anything from the appointment of a conservator, it could be the appointment all the way to a board of managers. I'm not saying I think they would do that, but those are the kinds of sanctions that are available to them to pursue.
And if the district was to recommend to the board that we, to use Diane's terms, bow, and the board voted 4-3 against that, then what?
Well,
or
I mean,
5-3, or
well,
5-2, or whatever.
The reality is that TEA is not necessarily going to care about how the vote shakes out. So if it were to go, for example, 4-3 in favor of making the change that TEA wants, then as far as TEA is concerned, the district will have complied with the change that it wants. If it goes 4-3 the other way, or however the vote shakes out, I mean, again, it won't matter. All that TEA cares about one way or another is that, hey, the district makes the policy change that TEA is directing.
And I know I said one question, this is part C or
Yeah.
D, probably at this point. Let's say we make the change.
Mm-hmm.
Are we expected to then enforce the change?
Yeah, I mean, the policy would apply to, and the expectation is that it would apply to all of your schools.
And in enforcing the change, are then we supposed to have we now have to change our policy and then have some disciplinary actions that are associated with violating the policy? So we have to do all those things?
That is, I mean, enforcement of the policy change obviously would have to be implemented at the school level. So, yeah, I mean, the idea would be that if there are violators of the policy, then it could carry with it certain discipline consequences for students. I will tell you that just in the course of the information that was provided by, I think, Mr. Jarrett and the team, was that the reality is that at least for the middle schools and certainly the elementaries, it doesn't appear like this has been much of an issue, because the truth is that it appears that for most of those grade levels, phones are either not permitted at
Right.
all, or they're only utilized for literally a tiny window during the day. So I don't think, at least for those levels, I don't think you're going to see much of a change if there was to be a policy change in terms of the day-to-day operation.
Thank you.
One of the questions I had about was about the minutes. So the minutes that were required by state law for classes is just during the class time period, is that correct? So the 75,600.
The 75,600 instructional minutes?
It's just during a class period, right?
Yes.
And
I-
so passing periods and lunches don't.
Right. That's not,
Count.
that doesn't count toward, we don't count that toward the 75,600 required instructional
Okay.
minutes.
So I guess the question would be is like, well, what, I mean, can we just then say, all right, well, then we're going to cut our year short because we hit our 75,600 minutes? I mean, if that's not counted towards the minutes, then how can that be part of the school day, I guess is the question.
Right. And I mean, again, that's where we went with the policy, and that's what drove the initial policy language. And of course, it was also drawn because you partnered with, and under Dr. Micah previously, the district partnered with parents to try and get feedback on how to handle personal communication devices like cell phones in the classroom. But, you know, and again, it comes back to, I have no doubt that the bill will be revisited in the next session. So that will start in January of '27. And, I suspect that there will be additional provisions added to that bill where, the legislature may define more of the terms that are used in it and may also look to, and I think this is where, I know Mr. Jarrett and I have talked, where the hope would be that we would want a seat at the table to get them that if they're going to revisit this bill, that they include language that gives local school boards more authority to do just what we did, which is partner with families, get feedback, and try to figure out some more flexible ways where we can incorporate the desire by parents to be able to communicate with their kids at some point during a school day.
Ms. Cox?
So, I've been at high school a couple times. Who is going to administer or police this while 3,000 kids are running to their next class?
That's the thing, is ultimately that becomes a potential issue for high schools, and that's probably a better question for Mr. Jarrett than me. But yeah, I mean, it would become ultimately incumbent upon the schools to enforce those rules. But at least in speaking with Tyler Shoesmith, who is your Executive Director of People Personnel Services, I mean, cell phone issues in general have not been a problem. I think I told you all this previously, but I have not, for example, I get involved in a lot of student discipline cases when families hire attorneys and all of that. I have not had a single one that's reached my level. And in talking to Tyler, he has not indicated that cell phone issues have been any kind of a major disruption or problem on campuses, for what that's worth.
So if we do modify our policy, my concern is the parents who have a need to communicate with their students. And I know in one of our conversations, we didn't have phones in the classrooms. I know Mr. Jarrett said that there might be something changing in that area, but also do we have an opportunity in the student handbook or somewhere to give an opportunity for parents to be able to contact their students in some form or fashion outside of this policy?
So if we change the policy, then we will have to work on a process to make sure that we don't lose that contact with families. So I don't know what that looks like exactly, especially in a high school with over 3,000 children, but we would still try to partner with our families to try to find a reasonable solution to allow them to have access to their children.
So are you thinking that means going through the office, or they ask for permission to use their phones?
At this time, the way it's written, it would have to be in the office, unless we find an opportunity to converge with the state to allow students to have a place where they're monitored by an adult or something. But right now, they do have limited access for communication during the school day unless they go to the office.
And the bill is written allows for, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lopez, 504
Right.
plans for students that might need that for special
Special needs.
special
Yes.
circumstances. They have to be approved by an administrator, or if there's a medical reason that you should have a phone with you, you can get a note from the doctor. But there's only 3 provisions that I'm aware of.
There's 3 provisions currently, or if there's something that would require compliance with a school safety protocol that would require the use of the personal communication device. But yes, for purposes of students with IEPs or 504 plans who utilize personal communication devices, sometimes if you have, for example, nonverbal students, they may use a device like that. iPads are used frequently as an example, where that's their method of communication. And so the law did account for those circumstances that those students would be allowed to use their personal communication devices. But there, I think, could be a way to, if the board makes the policy change, I think there could be a way to sort of come up with ways that are within the law, but that also would allow those parents to be able to have that ability to communicate with their children when they needed to, especially if there are things going on at home that parents need to be able to reach their kids.
Sheldon.
My primary concern with what sits before us is that we are setting our children and our families up to be dishonest in a big way, right? We worked with them, we asked them what they wanted, we gave them a policy that fits their needs, that sits within the law. And if we make this change, we are effectively saying, well, get a note from your doctor or sneak around back. And we don't have that issue with this in our schools. I would hate for us to create an issue that does not exist. Mr. Byer, you asked the question, did our minutes count between passing periods and lunch? And the answer, Mr. Jarrett, was no. So that's not really technically part of the school day? Is that what you're saying to me, Mr. Jarrett? That lunch is not really part of the school day because we're not getting credit for that?
Lunch and passing period does not count towards instructional minutes.
And the law suggests that we cannot have phones during instructional time or during the school day?
Well, the law is written to say that personal communication devices are not allowed during the school day. And that was what was at the initial outset of this whole thing was, well, school day means, for us, we define that to mean that that's instructional time. Because as we've talked about when we've discussed this before, I think everyone was on the same page that during class time when teachers are instructing,
Right.
that cell phones should not be present because they are a distraction to students and a distraction to learning. So the idea that the school district undertook at the time was, well, yeah, for anything that counts towards those 75,600 minutes, we would not want cell phones to be utilized because that's the key time, that's learning time. But because passing periods and lunch do not count toward those 75,600 minutes, then we define that to mean that's outside our school day. But that's what the agency has taken the position. And in response to some of the letters you all saw from legislators saying, no, we meant by saying school day in the law, we mean that to be bell to bell. So your first school bell to your last school bell of the day, that students should not be allowed to use personal communication devices unless there's a recognized exception in the law, that they should not be able to use them from that first bell to that last bell. And then after that, of course, before school, before that first bell, and right after that last bell, then it would be, of course, up to the districts to decide how they wanted to regulate any kind of use of personal communication devices. But from the first bell to the last bell, that is what the agency is saying, that's what school day means.
Do all of our schools have use bell system?
Our secondary schools do.
Do they bell between each class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my mind is racing. I think one of the things, if we choose to move towards the agency, I would like to ask for, I would like them to consider giving us credit for passing periods and for lunch, right? Because that now, you're now saying that's a part of the academic enrichment. And there's an argument to be made that when you're talking with your classmates and you're growing your community, that is a part of your education. So I agree with you, Mr. Byer. I think we need credit for that time.
Well, and that is the exact explanation that we gave to the agency at the outset of this process when they first came to us and said, hey, you aren't doing it right. That's exactly what we told them. We said, hey, this, passing periods and lunch don't count towards those 75,600 instructional minutes. And so because that is not instructional, then we wanted to give campuses the ability, in partnership with parents, to say, hey, that if they need to contact their parent during a 5-minute passing period, they can do that. If they wanted to do that at lunch briefly, they could do that. And so that's when you've seen from the data that's been shared by the administration that you do have those periods during the day where a lot of the schools have said, yeah, for this limited time, they can have that contact.
Thank you.
So the agency simply has said, yeah, we understand what your argument is, but they've never actually responded to it other than to say, nope, that's not right.
We can't go back and say, please respond to our.
Can you?
We can't go back and say, please respond to our.
Well,
We
I know we did
have-
it once.
We've
Yeah.
done it
Yeah, we've
Did it
asked,
twice now?
we've asked, and they have just kind of said, nope,
Okay.
that's not how it is. And my feeling, and I think it's probably shared by those of us who've been dealing with this, is that it's pressure from certain legislators who say, no, it has to be bell to bell.
Ms. Cox? Hold on, Ms. Villarreal, we'll go Ms. Cox and then you.
Has TEA been asked to present in front of the board regarding this?
Yes, early on, this was under Dr. Micah, we invited TEA to come and talk to the board and have that conversation. They declined.
Well, number one, they are refusing to give you a reason, and it's just on why they're ruling this way. That's number one. That shows me they have a very weak stance, and they know that you'll, tear them a new one when, you get a hold of that. So they don't want to give it to you. The second thing, I have no right to stand between a parent and a child. And in my particular case, I had a very sick husband. I've already told you about this. And my son had a cell phone. And I'm sure those cell phones are still residing with you, but I kept buying more. Because frankly, I had to have that connection with my child during a critical time. I am not going to step between a parent and a child. And frankly, those legislators, these ones that are calling us out for this, are the very ones that were saying that they were all for parental rights, as if we were trying to step between the children. Now we're trying to advocate for our kids and our parents, and what are they doing? So it's hypocrisy it's the worst type of hypocrisy.
And we pointed that out in our initial responses. We not only articulated our position about the definition of instructional time and what was and what wasn't, but we also emphasized that, look, there is a renewed effort to ensure that parent rights are recognized and honored. And that was part and parcel of the reason that the district did what it did, to your point, Ms. Villarreal. So, yeah, I get it, but this is unfortunately where we are.
Mr.
at this
Lopez,
point.
how much will it cost us to litigate this, if we have to litigate?
It's hard to articulate it, but going through rough estimate, going through sort of an appellate court level, which is where this would likely get, you're probably looking $50,000 to $100,000 once it's all said and done. It's a significant cost. And again, I just have to put it all out there for information for all of you to consider, right? But that is that we take this to its logical conclusion, and let's say that we prevail and we get either a judge or a panel of judges to agree with us. That's fine until next session. And then you could end up in a situation where you prevail, but then next legislative session, they just make the change to the bill. And that will gut
that's
us.
okay, and that's all well and good, but they didn't write a good bill. And it
Agreed.
was not defined correctly.
Agreed.
You don't go back after you pass a bill and then suddenly say, well, you guys should have known what we had in our minds, and you should just go ahead and bow to us and do what we tell you to do. I'm telling you, this is a test case.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you at all, but the legislature does have that ability to come back during a subsequent session and say, hey, we're going to amend the previous bill.
Well, then do it.
And they might. That's,
Well, which is fine.
Yeah.
They have every right to do that. But what they don't have the right to do is be the bully, try to, set an example using our district and our parents and our kids as that example is the machine gun fodder for their whims. So for one, I don't bow to bullies, no matter what. So I am absolutely not on board with bowing to TEA.
Ms. Shelton?
Mr. Byer, our goal today is to just have a conversation and see where we are, or is it to make a decision?
Make the decision. Because we have been given, well, let me back up. Ideally, we need to make a decision. We need to let our community and our schools know what's going on. We either need to make the change and give people time to adjust, or not make the change and let people quit worrying about what the change might be. So that's, to me, we need to make a decision. We can table this, have another discussion. I feel like we've talked about it a lot over the last few months. So the intent as possible action is to make a decision tonight.
Can we make a decision and have it effective the fall
We-
2026? That's what I missed. Okay.
Yeah, we can craft any language we want to with this motion, and we can make it effective whenever we want to. The TEA is going to do whatever the TEA is going to do. We have no idea what that's going to be. And so I guess where I stand on this, and I've said it multiple times, and I've said it in the op-ed that I wrote, that, I mean, we have a reasonable policy that has been vetted through our families, our communities, our schools, our educators, our students. It allows the students to learn in the classrooms because they're not using their phones. It allows our teachers to teach in the classrooms because they're not having to worry about taking care of kids' cell phones during class. Our families have access when they need to have access like they would normally would. And they try not, I mean, I don't know who abuses it or who doesn't, but, and then we're not putting ourselves in a financial issue where we're having to buy pouches, we're letting kids keep it in their backpacks or on their purse and just put away. And there seems to be a mutual respect with that between the educators and the students at this point. I'm not aware of any tardy issues. I'm not aware of any major disciplinary issues. I'm sure we've had some things happen, but those have not risen up to a level that have been concerning whatsoever. But we've requested an explanation from TEA. We've received none to date. Their guidance still says on their website that we are allowed to define the school day. And really, I'm hoping what comes out of this is what Mr. Jared said last meeting, what Mr. Lopez alluded to, is that we can have some kind of conversations with our legislators, with the lawmakers, and TEA to say, this is how it's being implemented practically. I mean, you're asking for things that, again, will allow kids and families to potentially skirt the rules. So where I am is I don't think anybody's arguing that cell phones should be allowed at schools. That's not what this vote is about. I'm sorry, in classrooms. I think we all recognize they can be a disruption to a classroom. But I think we've crafted something that is, again, reasonable, and it allows some flexibility, and it doesn't put an extra burden on our teachers. It doesn't put an extra burden on our administrators. And so I think the long-winded answer to your question is, I think we need to take action tonight.
Will
Ms. Landry.
the information provided to us about the direction each school is taking be provided to TEA as, is that something?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, we-
it does reflect that the majority of our schools have a very low tolerance for, in just the high schools or.
And while I did not
Flexible.
provide the spreadsheet itself to the agency in my recent communication with them, I articulated that the truth was that our elementaries and our middles are already largely in compliance with it. This is really more of a high school issue. And so that was why I had proposed the idea of, look, if the board makes the change, can we make it effective? To your question, was for the 26-27 school year to give, especially our high school families, the ability to adjust and kind of think about what they may need going into next year. And that's where the agency said, no, they want the change to be effective as soon as possible.
And that also gives us an opportunity to provide an alternative contact method for the families if it were to go into effect 26, 27.
Ms.
So
Thompson.
we can craft a policy that says to be implemented in 26, 27. Is that
Well,
going to?
I think the policy would, the policy, when it's implemented, we can put that as, you can make that as part of what you want to discuss, but it wouldn't be in the policy itself. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. I think what we have written fits the law.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion from any members? If not, I will make a motion to uphold our FNCE local policy as written.
Second.
And remember,
Oops, sorry.
sorry, so it's a motion and a second from Ms. Shelton. And remember, we have to do a record vote just until we get in the habit of this. So I'll go first. David Byer, aye.
Lisa
Miss-
Thompson, aye. Sorry.
Thompson, aye. Ms. Chigi,
Aye.
Mrs. Villarreal,
Aye.
Mrs. Cox,
Aye.
Mrs. Landry,
Aye.
Ms. Shelton.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you all.
Appreciate everybody's help. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. All right. Whoa. Got a little mood lighting in here for a second. All right, item 3, board training. So as I gave everybody a little bit of a heads up, Dr. Gibson, who is intending to be here for our board training, is stuck in north-ish Texas with the storm, or with the weather. So tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a modified version of that. So we will have to have Dr. Gibson come back to actually, I think, give us our official training. But Mr. Jarrett and I talked over the weekend, and we put together something that is a little bit like kind of using the framework of Dr. Gibson's presentation that I think he was going to give us to really talk about the sort of good governance, the balanced district scorecard, and then us as a board, what do we want to see as our priorities, regardless of, I know it's kind of hard to think, but regardless of who's sitting in these seats and who's sitting in the superintendent's seat, the balanced district scorecard was developed as sort of that strategic framework that guides what staff does. And so tonight is to really talk about, again, governance, what our role is in this, the balanced district scorecard, and then, again, ultimately trying to give some idea of collectively what we think from the balanced district scorecard are those items that we really see as important for the district at this point. And I'm not going to suggest that we're going to get all the answers tonight, but I think we can probably come to some pretty good, through the discussion, have a good idea of what we think is important. Because I think as of right now, Mr. Jarrett would agree, we don't necessarily, we just do things as a district, and we need to know what it is that we need to be looking at kind of going forward. So with that, again, the two takeaways, I think, is for us to refocus on the balanced district scorecard and make sure that that becomes something as a board we commit to, and that's something that we look at and use regularly to kind of guide our decisions. Becomes more of an objective discussion rather than a subjective discussion. And I'm not going to say that the subjectivity won't enter into things occasionally. But we have a document that should keep us grounded when it all kind of boils down. And then second, again, the takeaway from this would be to understand, what are the things that that we feel and need to focus on, and then hear from Mr. Jarrett in his role as an administrator, interim superintendent, as to how that aligns with what either we're doing or initiatives that we're looking at. So Mr. Jarrett put together this presentation for us, and he gave everybody a copy of it. I know no one's seen this ahead of time. Matter of fact, he's been working on it up until about 30 minutes ago, I think, right before we started this meeting. So he scrambled to put something together for us just to kind of reframe, refocus, and get us beginning of the school semester, and before we get too much further into the year, as we come into budget, graduations and all that, that we don't lose our time and energy in the wrong direction. So, Mr. Jarrett, do you want to add anything to that?
No, this was a lot of fun. So as Mr. Byers said, Mr. Gibson, Dr. Gibson couldn't be here tonight. And we both agreed that starting a new semester, me sitting into this new role, it's important that we're all on the same page, having the same conversations and focus on the same things as much as possible. And so I really first want to commend the board in their initial work when developing this scorecard idea. To be quite frank, when it first came out, I was trying to wrap my head around what are we trying to get to. But the part that I think is important is that it wasn't just designed with one person in mind or one department in mind. It included parents, it included staff, it included the board. And what I found to be beneficial is the attempt to really get ourselves grounded into the right things and not everything. Public schools are there's so many moving parts in it. And sometimes it's easy to get mired into the thing that we feel we're comfortable with, or perhaps the thing we're passionate about. But the scorecard helped us make better decisions that align to the 4 entities that were identified by our board. So bear with me in my presentation as this was a winter breeze presentation put together. So one of the things that Mr. Breyer and I talked about is as we talk about board and superintendent, I think what's important is that it's a team effort. And it's not saying that individuals don't have things that they're passionate about and they shouldn't be passionate about. I think that's important. I don't think that is about group thinking. I don't think it's about one person saying, this is the only thing we're going to focus on. But we have to get to a point where we come to collective agreements. And those collective agreements require sometimes disagreement too. And that's okay. But I will say that this work ultimately puts us in a fork in the road at all times. And the fork in the road can make us choose whether we go to an individual stance or a collective stance. And so that's kind of what this graphic is about. How do we make a right and be on the team when it comes down to making a decision that's good for our students, staff, stakeholders, and stewardship versus going to the left where we only make a decision based on one entity, which may be students in isolation or staff in isolation or stakeholders or stewardship. And so that's really what that is. So in Dr. Gibson's presentation, he talks about the 4 stages of alignment of systems. And stage 1 is reacting to problems. Stage 2 is early systematic approaches. Stage 3 is aligned approaches. And stage 4 is integrated approaches. And I'm going to show you a graphic because I think this graphic really tells a tale of the difference between the stages. So in that first stage, when it talks about reaction, you notice that the arrows are going in multiple different directions. And as a former, and I will say former recovering high school principal, that's how I felt when I first walked into the role as a brand new high school principal. Because I had 150 staff members, I had almost 2,700 students, and I had every single department that possibly makes a school district run, but at a campus level. And when I walked in there, everybody had an idea about what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And there was varying opinions all over the place. And what started happening is that if I would have sat there and listened to the ones I wanted to listen to, somebody was going to be left out and somebody was going to be ignored. So I had to also get those arrows aligned. And so if you look at the systematic approach, you start seeing that the arrows start to kind of get aligned a little bit, but they're still a little bit off. But that's progress. And that progress is where you're trying to move those arrows by really having those honest conversations about what's working, what's not working. And you're looking at data, qualitative and quantitative, to say this is where we need to go. And then you have aligned approaches where there's still 2 different approaches. So you got A and B, but they're all going in the same direction, but one is still more important than the other. So getting to that point where we're integrated, that means that all the arrows are focused and driving in the same direction. That is a very lofty task, but it's doable. And it's doable when you really understand how all these different parts work together. And that's not just on our board, it's on us as a system as well. And so when I started thinking about this whole idea of the scorecard, I started looking at board of trustees and then the superintendent. I'm understanding my role and then understanding your role as well. You guys are, as you're at the dais, you're obviously setting the vision and the board goals, right? You're adopting policies just like you did tonight and priorities. You're approving the budget and resources. You're monitoring progress via scorecards, and you're ensuring accountability. Ultimately, every time we have a board meeting, these conversations tend to come up because you focus on the what and the why. But when we go over to the superintendent side and the superintendent staff, we lead to implementation of those goals. That means that's the day-to-day work, okay? That is where we're getting down into the weeds and we're saying these are the things that need to be done. That's important because we have to have that opportunity to pivot, to adjust, and to modify based on informed data and informed approaches and feedback as well. We have to align systems and staff and resources. You'll hear us all the time say, Everything is not going to be created equal. Sometimes we're going to have a school that's going to need a little more staff because the circumstances are calling for it, or a school that's going to need an HVAC system where another school doesn't. All of those resources have to align to the needs of our students and our community. Managing daily operations. That is, I mean, we just had a snow day. We have to manage those things. Like, how do we make sure the schools are warm, making sure the pipes aren't breaking? All of those things we have to do on a day-to-day basis. And if we tell you all the things that go on, you guys probably would say, I don't want to be a board member ever again. So, but that's because that's our role. Our role is essentially to ensure that what you want to accomplish as a board is done on a daily basis, and that becomes our higher priority. Analyzing data and adjusting strategies. You just saw us do our PEMS report, or our data last month. And one of the things that you saw was when we looked at the data, we didn't just say, oh, well, we didn't meet it and we're going to keep on moving forward. We talked about how we adjusted, and we never wavered on the idea of where we're going to be in 5 years. That's because that aligns to our scorecard and where we want to be in 5 years. I think sometimes where people make the mistake, they think they're going to all of a sudden make magic in 1 year and they've hit the mark. The truth of it is that magic is something that happens over time. That way you know that it's stable and it's consistent for all kids, no matter what happens there. And then report progress and risk. I think what's important is when we're giving an update to you guys, we're updating you on the progress we're making, but also the risk that may be involved if we don't do some of the things that we need to do. And then if we're doing something just out of the loop, then you're able to pull us back and say, hey, you know what are you doing? And why are you doing it? And once we get that question, then we can respond accordingly. And then connecting strategic roles to scorecard, establishing board goals and success criteria, approved scorecard indicators, monitoring trends, not day-to-day operation, ask strategic questions, and you guys do a great job of that, by the way, and as the district scorecard. When y'all ask us questions, we get better because of it. That's one of the things that's beautiful about having a school board. We are so close to the work that sometimes we have a blind spot. You guys help us see those blind spots by just asking the question that tells us, I may need to look at this and look a little closer. But then what we have to do is go in and align our system to the initiatives and your board goals. We can't go rogue and saying, oh, we're just going to go and we want to, start a rabbit club or something like that. And it's not tied to your board goals and where we're trying to be. Manage analyzing the scorecard data, implementing strategies and adjust as needed, report progress and risk, next steps, etc. And we do this by dashboards and progress reports. So one of the things I thought was important for us to do is define urgent versus important. And then you guys I'm going to ask you guys if you'll take a couple of minutes and kind of chart down what you think is urgent versus important. So if you look at the word urgent, if I can have one of our board members read urgent for me. I like participation too. Ms. Chidgey, you look like you were wanting to push the button.
So tasks that demand immediate attention due to imminent deadlines or consequences, often driven by external pressures.
Perfect. Can someone read important for me?
Tasks that contribute to long-term goals and values.
Okay. So to that being said, I want you guys to think about what do you see as urgent in our system, and then what do you see as important? Just take a couple of minutes, think, jot it down, and then we'll just kind of share out in a second. Take about 2 minutes. And there's the definition for you in case you need to look at it.
Bald and cedar. Tracy. Thank you. I'll use it. Thank you.
Sorry, I know I'm playing dual roles. I'm like, I haven't forgotten my curriculum instruction side, so it's still in me. All right, so let's act like we're in school. So let's share out. So what are some urgent things that you guys came up with? And it's just cold call. Anyone can call something out urgent.
You're having broken pipes, things like this. You have an emergency inside of a school. You have anything that is the immediate need for attention now.
Yep. Broken pipes. What else?
Cell phone policy.
Cell phone policy. Okay. It's timely.
The rollout of the bond.
Rollout of the bond.
I said facility needs and staff needs.
Facility needs and staff needs. Okay, let's jump over to important. What are some important things?
Good leadership, producing prepared students, having good and keeping good teachers, good systems in place, very targeted instruction, and I can't read my first thing. I think it says communication. Oh, no, curriculum.
Okay.
Governance, growth, development.
Governance, growth, development. Anyone else?
I was going to say community conversation, because all around this idea of earning trust. So community conversation, student voice, listening to our students and earning their trust, and then training our instructors and our administrative team.
Correct. So basically all of you guys are right. And so here's some examples that about 2 years ago the commissioner put up on the board. And it really made us pause for a second. You're right. We are constantly, Mr. Jimenez and all of the executive staff, we are running 100 miles per hour chasing those urgent things, whether it's facility needs, individual stakeholder needs, emergency response, budgeting and fiscal cliff. It's not saying they're not important. They are. But they're part of the process. They're not the process. And when everything becomes urgent, what it does is it tips the scale and then it becomes unbalanced. And when it becomes unbalanced, the important things tend to fall to the wayside and not ignored, but not given the absolute attention that they deserve, like college career readiness, instructional leadership, a rigorous curriculum, teacher recruitment and development pipeline. Those are the long-term impact things that if we focus our attention on, the whole system starts to move in the right direction. You can't ignore the urgent things, but if we just spend so much time chasing the urgent over and over again and don't look back at those important things, then we're doing more harm than good to our system. So hence leads us to our balanced district scorecard, and Mr. Byer is going to jump in on this piece. And I think the reason why, as we talked about it, is I have used this balanced district scorecard in every single thing that my department did in C&I. And when Dr. Gibson first brought this to us as a district, at first, I will admit, I was a little confused because the way he was explaining, I was just like, what are you really getting here? And it was the key word was balance. And when he said balance is when it just really gave me the aha. It's saying that all four of those things are equally important. And you should consider all four, the students, the staff, the stakeholders, and stewardship when making a decision. And I want to say, for example, we've had to go through a lot of budget cuts. And they're painful. They are. We have things that we've done and we love so much and we just want to continue. But when we started really looking at our scorecard, we started looking in the mirror a little bit closer. And in the mirror, we had some things that were siloed and focused solely just on students that ignored our staff and perhaps our stakeholders and our stewardship. Perhaps we had some things that are for students, but they were so costly that it really wasn't necessarily good stewardship because we were spending a lot of money, but we didn't have any results to support that decision. So really what I started having conversations about when people said, hey, we really think this software program that we're going to apply for to use with students would be good for our kids, first thing I say is, how is it going to support our students? Where's the evidence? How is our staff going to implement it? And what's the training plan to get it done? How are the parents going to be involved in this decision? Can it extend beyond the bell and into the home and, so they can continue to work on the work? And then what is the cost of it? By asking those four questions, we were able to say no to some things. We also were able to start deleting some of our digital resources that we have seen a decline in usage. So they were nice to have, but the thing of it is when you're a big system, a lot of vendors love to get into a big system. Because once you get in, they feel like you just forget about them and they just keep collecting the money. Well, because our board adopted this, it's really allowed us to say, time out. Where's the bang for our buck? And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Byer to kind of talk about the scorecard. I'm sorry, I start to get a
No,
little
that's fine,
passionate
because I
about
might
it.
just let you keep going, because you're probably better prepared for this than I am right now, just to be honest. Did not expect to have to actually speak tonight until Dr. Gibson decided to gracefully bow out tonight. So really, when we get into this part of it, I think the idea here is, we all have a copy of this. And it really is a roadmap. It's not a task list. It's not you just check it off and you say you're done. That does happen at one end of this document, but we're in these first two columns. We have the overall priorities and the objectives, and that's where we live. And then that's why there's purposefully a big bold line that goes to the right of those, because we do not need to be anywhere to the right of that. That is the staff. That is Mr. Jarrett. That is executive staff. And that's all the folks that trickle all the way down through the schools. And so I think the idea here is that when we look at students, stakeholders, or students, staff, stakeholders, and stewardship, that we are, again, balancing all of those things and really using this to guide what it is that we need to do. And so the definition that Mr. Jarrett gave us, thank you very much for adding that in there. But I think where we want to try to talk tonight is, as we go through these next objectives, and we'll have one slide for each one of these, is that, are there things as we're going through this that pop into your head that, of the four objectives for our students, are there things that we've already started to see or really think that we want to, focus on, that we think are important, not just urgent, but are important? And so, before we get into that, going back when this was developed, Mr. Jarrett hinted at, it was great for him to see this as a strategic roadmap. And I know at this point I was the only one on the board at the time when this was actually developed. But it was multiple meetings of multiple hours that went through exercises where we had sticky notes on the board, and we really tried to distill what it was that we thought objectively as a board we needed to stay broad enough but generally focused enough to give Mr. Jarrett and others the ability to work. And then, as we're looking at these, what are the things that we want to see as a board as a metric that gets reported back to us? So if we talk about academic growth and critical thinking, it's a big concept, and there's a lot of key actions, and there's measurables, there's outcomes. What do we want to see as a board that would show us that we have academic growth, life readiness, belonging, engagement, emotional, physical well-being, mental well-being? Are there things that we need to think about collectively that if we said academic growth is our priority, what are the one or two things that we would want to see back on a regular basis to say we are achieving that goal? Because that's really where we live. We live in this objective area that allows us to see what all that work has been doing. And I think, when we talk about the strategic role, the tactical role, and the operational role, and then the tactical role, we live in that strategic area that Mr. Jarrett talked about. Now, we can use the operational and the tactical to kind of inform we've got to see some of that backup, right, to be able to make an informed decision. But we don't want to be in that role doing that work. We want to use it to inform our decision. So we talk about students. These are the four objectives that are for the board objectives. And then we'll just go to the next one. For staff, competitive salary and benefits, professional development, and that last one is input satisfaction and retention. And I think that retention part of it is an important one these days. Then we go stakeholders. We have student relationships, family relationships, and community relationships. And that's different than when we talk about student relationships. We have a whole section about students, but this is about, how those students, not necessarily in the mold of how well they're doing in class, but sort of how well they're doing outside of that class as well. And then stewardship, facility needs, program evaluation, budget development, communication. So those are really the 13 things that we've talked about as being the things that we as a board really need to be focusing on. So,
Any discussion on those items for anybody?
I know I'm a broken record, but I just feel like attendance. I mean, and maybe it's an umbrella. Maybe you can't have academic growth, I certainly belonging and engagement, mental, emotional, physical well-being without it. But I just feel like that's so important. It ought to be in there somewhere.
So when you look at, man, look at yours, I didn't bring a copy of that. When you look at key actions, you're going to see attendance embedded in the key actions. And the reason it's not a standalone is because of those factors that we have identified in a global perspective about belonging and engagement. Students come to school not because we demand it. Students come to school because we care for them and we take care of them. And I think what's important is that these scorecard goals allow us to use that umbrella to welcome kids in and take better care of them. And once kids know that this is a place that they belong and they feel successful and they feel loved, then they're going to want to come to school. And we have seen this. A parent said to me, or to one of our staff when we did the pilot over at Royal Ridge, and she said, and this is third grade, hated coming to school. And since he went into that class, he hates to miss class now. He wants to come to school every day. So that's why when we get over to those key actions, we're going to make some decisions that are strategic. They're kind of out of the box. But then what we do is we discover something magical. And when I heard that story about this young man not wanting to come to school and now he doesn't want to miss a day because he's in there with his whole little group and this is his place where he belongs, then that's how the scorecard helped us get to that point. And when we made that project, that was the first thing we started with, was the scorecard. So attendance is a byproduct, and we're seeing that as we put it into our key actions. And when we see something dropping that has a metric, then we put that into key actions, but it doesn't change those priorities or objectives here. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to point out on the scorecard in section 1.4A, we do have attendance rates as one of the goals that's to be reported to us. There isn't a goal for 25, 26 in here, but there was a 24, 25 goal.
Yeah.
1.4A, correct. So it's under students. Strengthening communication with families by collecting information on desired priority of services to support student mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And then one of the metrics is improved attendance rates.
Mm-hmm. And then, thank you, Ms. Langer, for pointing that out. And I think why that's been important. When I said earlier, when you guys ask a question or bring something up, it just allows us to take a little closer look. And Ms. Chidgey, just so you know, I started an entire attendance committee that started, let's say, back in October. And I have counselors, I have principals, and I have teachers on that committee. And really what they're doing is we're taking every single thing we've ever done, and we're just trying to synthesize it till we get to a point of the best formula. But it always starts with our classroom teachers. Are we taking care of our classroom teachers and they have all the resources, the skills, and everything? Because if that classroom teacher is that place where that kid wants to belong, they're going to be there every day. Can we get better? Yes, and that's why this scorecard is important. I will not profess to you guys that we have hit the mark on everything on this scorecard. That's why this document is a monster, but it's a lovely monster that allows us to have direction on what we need to address so we can be the best district in the world. And so that's kind of what this is. Yes, ma'am.
This may be, Mr. Byer, diving into the weeds, and you may say, Tracy, get onto the left side. I'm pretty sure you're going to say that.
Do you want to just cut
But
to the chase, or do you want to?
I'm just going to go for it, though. under student, the one that stands out to me today, really based on the text messages that we have received lately, is mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And while academic growth is probably, that there's a reason that it's 1.1, right now I am concerned with our mental, emotional, and physical well-being of our babies, of our children, of our students, given all the other things that are happening. And I just want to know, and again, I now know that I am on the other side of the line. I just want to make sure that we're being thoughtful in each school about how we approach the conversations, the interaction, the support of the students when all of these other things are happening in their neighborhood, on their campus. You're locked in a room, all that's traumatic and will impact their social, mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Yes to all the above. There is no, and prior to going to education, I spent 5 years in the mental health world. And one of the things that journey taught me is that when you feel academically inferior or life inferior, you need a little extra help. And that's something we have to start instilling in all of our staff is these kids are coming to us with invisible backpacks, and we know that. So how do we start to let them expose those things that they need from us to deliver on that? But I think that's where the scorecard comes in, because that's in partnership with the parents. When the parents sometimes come in and give us a social story about what excites a kid, then that allows us to double down on those things. And we don't always do the best job of understanding what those excitements are. And I think that's where that relationship becomes so important between school and home and school. And so the problem is just like I said earlier, we ask our staff to do everything, that sometimes they feel like they're not doing anything. And so this is going to allow us to start peeling the onion back a little bit and getting rid of some of those things that's really just time waste and really focus on the things that matter the most. And so that's kind of why, as we talk about the scorecard and you guys stand to the left, it's for us to stay to the right, but also for us to strategically abandon those things that really aren't making a difference. And we use the scorecard on the why, because sometimes, and you guys have heard that as board members, oh my God, I can't believe Mr. Jarrett's getting rid of this. I'm not exactly getting rid of it. I'm looking for something to make us more effective and efficient. And it's not purposeful, because I think people all have good intents, but can we get better by just being honest with ourselves? Sorry, I know it sounds preachy, but.
Well, that was good, and part of it, and the other part is, there are people jumping fences and all that. I need those children to feel like this is still a safe space.
Correct.
Right.
And that's a priority for us. And to Mr. Byers' point, too, that's why you guys deserve an update from us to know what we're doing to address some of those things. And I'm sorry, Ms. Cox, you had something.
I wasn't going to, just going back to the urgent, mine would have been campus safety, just to Tracy's point.
And I'm going to piggyback off that one. And that's one of the things that, after, unfortunately, what happened in Uvalde, safety became the thing. And everybody on this campus is scrambling to make sure everything is safe. I don't think sometimes, and I don't disagree with the safety, but as a high school principal, you have 300 doors. And every day you're worried about one of those 300 doors being left open. And I think that's why safety becomes a priority for everyone. And I think that's why Dr. Micah did a really nice job of constantly reminding people safety is all of our responsibility. And we have to make sure that we're always keeping an eye open. And I will tell you, Royal Ridge was a perfect example about a school that takes safety serious, and they responded appropriately to keep those kids safe. And so I think safety is an urgent thing, but I think that's something that balances the scale that we wouldn't ignore anyway.
Not to belabor, recognizing I'm on the right side. Let's take Royal Ridge. They responded appropriately. But a 6-year-old is remembering that differently in their head. And so when I talk about mental, emotional, physical well-being, I need them to know that this is not normal. This is this is a one-off, and we've got you. That's the other part of that.
I'm glad you said that, because right after that incident, myself, the chief of police, and our campus admin went and debriefed with that entire faculty. We had counselors on staff during the event, and the next day they moved the entire counseling training to Royal Ridge so that if any child needed help and support, we were there for them. So that's an example of being responsive to our student safety needs.
So in respect to what we're talking about, the mental, emotional, physical well-being, I think it's everybody's job. I'm not saying it's just one person's job, but it certainly falls on the counselors a lot. And the counselors weren't part of the raise. The counselors are given more tasks every year. They're test coordinators, they're LPAC committee, the list goes on and on. I hope as something to be looking at and studying is how to relieve them, and perhaps, I know we just cut, but we need more counselors on all schools, but particularly our high schools that are being asked to do so much. So that to me is something that is important.
Right. And I think that's a beautiful segue to why the scorecard works, because I don't disagree with that. I'm married to a counselor, so clearly I appreciate that. But I think what's important, just what you said, because you got to ask 4 questions. If I add another counselor, how does that help our students more? The second question you got to have, how does that help our staff? And then you have to ask, how does our community feel about adding more counselors? And the last thing, can you afford it? And if you ignore one of them, correct, then you've lost balance. It's no longer a balanced decision. And that's the hard part. But it makes it more doable and understandable, because we would love to. I have a list of things that I would love to have people for that we fundamentally could say we need. But there's only so many dollars. So we have to figure out, what are we willing to give up in order to get? That's part of that process of strategic abandonment. I know our counselors are overwhelmed. I know our administrators are overwhelmed. There's a lot of people that are working extremely hard that bring such value to our schools. And I would never put one above the other. But I do think we have to look a little closer and say, who's carrying a heavier burden at this point in time based on the circumstances of our society or our life and our schools. And that's just that pause to use a scorecard to make that decision. So that leads to strategic alignment. I didn't miss anyone, right? I can just make sure. Okay. Our priorities must operate as an integrated system, not isolated initiatives. And I know that we will all get to a point where we're going to say, but we need. But how do we look at the whole system? I had a department come in the other day and said, I want to do this, and this, and this is going to make my department great. And I said, but it doesn't make Northeast great. I said it helps Northeast be great, but in isolation, it doesn't. So how does this thing help our whole entire system? And maybe it will, but we have to at least ask those questions to make sure it's integrated. So integrated supports and outcomes, students' academic growth, engagement, and well-being. This is what integration looks like for us. Staff, we recruit them, we develop them, and then we retain them. Stakeholders, our students, our family, and community also has a voice. And then stewardship, our facilities, our budgets, and our resources are aligned. This is what integration looks like, and so is no longer an isolated action. How integration supports outcomes. So this is just a quick graphic that I threw together to talk about misaligned versus aligned. So if you look at the misaligned, you'll see students, fragmented supports, staff, competing initiatives, stakeholders, inconsistent communication, stewardship, resources spread thin, and basically what you get is uneven student outcomes. But when everything is aligned, you get integrated academics. That goes to the point of where kids are engaged in class, but also in the workforce, et cetera. And their wellness, they start to feel a lot happier, more successful. Staff, clear priorities and capacity. Ms. Gigi, to your point, do they have the capacity to do everything that's being asked? Because we're looking at the staff as a whole. And then stakeholders, strong engagement and trust is built. And then stewardship, strategic use of resources. This is how we get better, because this is how we take care of that need that you're talking about, because our resources start to become more in abundance. Now we can start strategically put those things in place. So alignment in action would look like instruction plus wellness plus belonging, staff, professional growth plus compensation, stakeholders, feedback loops plus communication, and then stewardship, data form plus budgeting. So why does this matter? So what I did is I took an example of what academic supports look like in a balanced approach. If we did a balanced approach to addressing academic supports, we would have targeted academic interventions, progress monitoring, instructional supports aligned to the district curriculum. Then the staff would be in training high-pack instructional practices, data-driven decision, and fidelity to academic framework. The stakeholders, family communication, student goal setting, community partnership support learning beyond the classroom, and then finally, stewardship, strategic staffing, budget alignment, investment in evidence-based academic programs. All four play a role to yield improved academic achievement, sustained growth, and increased college career and life readiness. That makes sense, what I'm saying? So once all four of those arrows are pointed in the right direction, we don't have a choice but to win with our students. So benefits, students improve outcomes, stronger staff satisfaction and retention, increased stakeholders' trust, and responsible use of resources. So I put this in here as a question because I need direction just as well. And so when I looked at the focus areas that I think are important, does that align to you as the board as far as those goals? And so recruiting and retaining and supporting teachers, student safety and well-being, community and family relationships, promote and deliver academic excellence, and provide students and staff the necessary resources to achieve success. Do those align to you guys as the board? And you can add something if you like, or delete something, whichever.
Well, and I would argue adding starts to take away from the idea that it's an area of focus, if that makes sense. Meaning that if we start spreading ourselves too thin, then you start spreading yourself too thin.
Thank you.
and multiple priorities are then no priorities kind of thing. But I think, personally, just reading this, it hits on what I would think would be sort of the key areas. Ultimately, we just can't have schools fail is sort of is the bottom line. But I think all of these then help support the idea that we would not have failing schools. And I think what I would want to see from this is that we might have one or two things that you could look at and say, these are the things that you'll judge me on. Not just this, but here's two things that are metrics that I think would be reasonable for us on the board to then look at and say, yeah, we've done it, or man, we're falling short, or we've way exceeded that. Mm-hmm. So that would be my suggestion. But Ms. Landry.
Okay, and forgive me if I'm looking at this incorrectly, but to me it looks like a kind of a step down flow, and so I think it's maybe a little bit out of sequence. I like all of the concepts here, but I think if you look at it from the top, recruiting, retaining, and supporting teachers, and then providing the staff the necessary resources to achieve success, leads to student safety and well-being, and also promotes and delivers academic excellence, and then ties into community and family relationships. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. It actually is not in order, but I appreciate that because all five of them are a priority equally, but I definitely can see where you're coming from with that. It's just Apple did this for me. I wish I could take credit. It just kind of populated it that way. So
I think they're all great, and I think if we put them in that order and use it as part of like an advertisement or something that we share with our community, mm-hmm. It makes sense in how recruiting and retaining, supporting teachers promotes and providing their resources promotes student safety and well-being, and then delivering academic excellence, and then community and family relationships, and that kind of.
So I think I got one is recruiting, two, I'm sorry,
Number two is the bottom one.
There we go. I forgot these were sitting here. There we go. Number two, bottom one, three, staff, student safety and well-being.
Right.
4, promote and deliver academic excellence, and 5, community relations.
Yep.
Got it.
That does make a lot of sense.
Yep, I like it. Any other feedback?
I really like that. So it's going to say, I am recruiting, retaining, and supporting teachers while providing students and staff the necessary resources to achieve such that we promote and deliver academic excellence in an environment that's safe for the safety and well-being of our children, and we support community and family relations.
Yep.
That is good, Marcia.
I didn't do it, he did. I just read it.
I think we might have some,
Uh-oh.
I don't think they can be in order. I don't think they can be in order. I think each one of us is going to say something different, and I will tell you, as a principal, whenever we did surveys, we were all over the map, but safety always came out from parents. That's what they wanted first. So, I mean, I like that they're all important and that they don't have an order. I think on any given day, a different one pops to the top as urgent.
And I'll say, just to that point, all 5 of these were put on here very deliberately because I feel that they're all important for the good of our schools. I think conceptually is how they all tie together, I think is what you're getting at more so, because I don't think we can do the work we're doing by saying this is a priority this week and that's a priority next week. I think we have to look at this holistically, like all of these things matter every single day while we're working with our families in school.
Right, and so providing the resources at the top for the teachers helps the students feel safe and secure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I had it.
Okay. Any?
I think it's the arrows that
Sorry.
but I think that now, I mean, what I'm hearing is that, I mean, you can actually move these things and create a narrative with sort of these 5 things. So, you know, we said it one way a minute ago, and then we kind of said it slightly different, but it all ultimately says the same thing.
Yeah.
It is, and you can kind of start wherever you want. But
I'm going to
I
make
think
a circle tonight.
I think the technical aspect of it is that, yeah, the arrows may have created a little bit of a cascading confusion.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Al.
again, this was done over a weekend when you didn't expect it. But I think generally consensus-wise, we all seem to agree that, you know, these are the things that are important.
It's very good.
Yes,
Thank you.
and
It's very, very
Yes, and.
the one thing that's not on here that I know is at the forefront of your mind, because we've talked about it a lot, is being fiscally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we can infer based on, you know, what we say the goals are. If we're doing these things,
Right.
you know, we're going to do them in a way that is, that makes sense.
Yep.
And that manages our budget. So I just, like, we all know that that is a priority, that we're spending our resources wisely.
Correct.
I kind of see the bottom one talking to that. It doesn't say.
Necessary resources.
It doesn't necessarily say
Yeah.
fiscal, which we all talk about up here, but I
Right.
think resources, you know, we give them the right resources, then that helps.
And again, these are not about me, these are about we. And so how we function as a district to meet the needs of our number one customers and taking care of them. And so these, I feel, collectively will yield the results that we're hoping to get for our students and our families. And so as a support to that, as you guys are monitoring accountability, student outcomes, staff metrics, stakeholder feedback, resources, these are things that I felt like you guys deserve to know. And so we can deliver to you guys to know that we're moving in the right direction. So as board members, you guys can see what's happening in the beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. So for example, retaining staff or hiring and retaining staff. How many vacancies do we have on the first day of school? How many vacancies do we have in November? I think those kind of things let you guys know, because if we don't have a quality teacher in a room, it's going to ultimately affect us academically. And what happens with that is that then people say, well, it's a curriculum instruction issue. No, it's a teacher issue. We don't have a person there. And so we have to do more on that front end to make sure we're hiring and retaining staff and finding different ways to do that. And so that's kind of the way I kind of saw that.
Well, and going back to that, though, I think maybe that's why I should have saved my comment for this slide instead of the previous slide, but I think it would be helpful to hear from you in an email or something to us with the previous slide that has the 5 areas that you'd be looking at as to what does this monitoring and accountability look like to you? And so maybe there's 1 or 2 bullet points for each one of those previous 5 priorities that say, this is what this looks like from the superintendent position, and what would we think would be helpful to come back and show you how we're meeting that objective. And maybe it's, we had 100 openings at the beginning of the year, and now we only have 10. Okay, great. We've done something correct.
Right.
Now, what does that look like? And so I would request, and if anybody else has thoughts, you can give this, but I would say if there's a way to give us your feedback on what that looks like, because I think that then is helpful for us to look at, and either at the next available meeting or whatever that is, and then we can discuss if we all 7 kind of agree on that, or do we need to make some tweaks to what that looks like? Because Ms. Chidgey might be looking for attendance, and Ms. Landry might be looking for community outreach. Well, somewhere in there, maybe those 2 things are actually the same, but you just worded it in a way that made them think that, it's something different. So I personally think that would be helpful.
Okay.
So that we know what that accountability and monitoring actually looks like.
I can do that, and I won't have Apple format it for me either. So that way, it's not, circle. I'm a circle. Oh, I can't do Canva. This is yours.
So really, this kind of mixes quite a bit of what we've talked about previously between governance and outcomes and that kind of thing. And really what this is for us as a board to use a scorecard to work with each other, really to align our decisions, commit to focus on good governance, commitment to collective responsibility. And what that means is that we don't always have to agree, we don't always have to make the same decision, but once that decision is made, we're all responsible for making sure that particular action item gets carried forward. You may not like it, you may love it, but it's a board decision, whether it's 4-3, 5-2, 7-0. That is what the board has decided. And so I think it doesn't have to be unified, but it has to be a collective responsibility. And then commitment to continuous improvement and stewardship. And I think, obviously we didn't get to have our official training tonight, but always looking at what can we do better? What are things that we need to do? And I know several of you have given me over the last several months ideas of, hey, maybe we could try to do this. Maybe we can implement this, certain thing. Like one of the things we did last meeting is our board secretary will now be handling all the matters from the floor items. And so she's going to do that. Meeting minutes before they come to all of us, the board secretary is going to review those instead of everything coming to me. How can we be better about disseminating information and allowing people to have time to review information? So all of those things, how we can improve and be more efficient, but not in a way that cuts corners. Like, are we getting the right information? Are we doing the right things? And so anyway, these are things that I think we can all agree to commit to, and I think we already all have, but I think it's just a reinforcement of where we are and what we need to be doing as this job. So if there's other things that you can think of, I'm definitely open to hearing. Did you have something?
I do. So we're talking about using the balanced scorecard, and I'm going through, and we had some specific metrics that were included in the outcomes throughout the scorecard, and we had goals all the way up to 24, 25. for most of them, and then a couple, I see some 25, 26 goals, but not updates. And so,
I printed a copy off today, and it has 27, 28 goals on it. Like,
So
oh, I
I'm
see what you're
looking-
saying, though, the gold box.
right.
Got it.
Right. And so, like 24, 25, for some of the goals, it shows that we met those. So my question is, Mr. Byer, are you saying that those data points, that we remove the data points and the goals and have Mr. Jarrett redefine those in
No.
alignment with the scorecard?
I don't, I wasn't inferring, well, I wasn't meaning that, and if that's how it came across, I think what I was more referring to was, and this is where I have to be careful because we don't have personnel on the agenda, so we can't talk about personnel, but that if those are the metrics that have been established, let's say those are the goals that have been established, then I would want the superintendent to say, these are the ones I'm focusing on. They may already exist in the district scorecard, so not necessarily come up with anything new, but use what's in there already to say, this is what I'm looking to further. These are my priorities. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, but.
Yes,
Oh, yes, and. Okay, thank you, Tracy. So I think it's not a bad idea to address and look at through the goals and the opportunities that we had for the metrics on the scorecard, and to Mr. Jarrett's point earlier, to say, is this really important? Does this contribute to our long-term success, or is this something we're just chasing to be chasing? So, not to put more on your plate, but to give you a launching point of, because I remember sitting out here and having extensive conversation about what the data points were with a very different group of board members, and talking through a lot of these goals and data points, and really, are they relevant any longer? I don't know. Or do they really contribute to the purpose and the longevity of the district? I don't know. But I would think that would be your launching point, and then adding things that you see may be necessary and removing things that aren't.
Yeah, and I think I know what you're talking about too with the scorecard. I think we were in this middle school dance where the boys were against one wall and the girls on the other side, where we weren't sure if we were staying the course. And so for my former department, it was easy to have data points. So if you look at the CNI, it's because it's tested. And so I think one of the things, if we're agreeing that our scorecard is going to be our guiding principle or our North Star, whichever way you look at it, then we can go in, scrub that, get it tighter, and then use that as our anchor to continue our work moving forward. Because I think that's what you're getting at, because that's what's front facing, and I think it's good for us to be able to keep that tightly coupled. I think to Mr. Byers' point, it really goes to this next slide, is a good director creates an environment which gives the actor the encouragement to fly. And I think me knowing kind of where we are collectively allows a clear line of sight to deliver on the promise that we all want for our kiddos. And if you guys are the directors of the movie, then I would like to be the actor that plays the part, but I need to know what movie we're playing in. And no, it sounds weird, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. So that's kind of where that was, but I think the scorecard is our opportunity to just keep getting better. I really do. I think it has a lot of opportunity in there, and I agree with you, Ms. Landry, that there are some things that you should even throw away in there, because I think sometimes we get into word salad too. And so I think it's just some opportunity for us to get more targeted, more specific, and then that way you guys will have an update that is transparent for all.
Ms. Landry, are you is part of your question, is part of your request that we look at what's in the scorecard now in terms of the goals to see if those are still relevant before we push forward?
I think it's only fair to Mr. Jarrett and his role and to the district to have relevant and current data points that we're measuring. And to your point, measurable data points. If we have something that can't be measured or isn't as easily measured in the tool, then we would look to you for guidance on how to make that more measurable. But I think that in doing this, because ultimately I see this tool as a way for the board to measure the performance of the superintendent. And if we're measuring you by unfair metrics or metrics that don't exist, then we don't have real good guidance on which direction. But we also need to kind of sit down and look at what's realistic and what should be in the scorecard as far as the metrics, and then make sure the scorecard is updated and that we're all under the same understanding as we move forward with the scorecard. And I like having the goals for different periods, as you mentioned earlier, to have the updates throughout the year, the first, midway, and end of year, to just verify that we're all on the same page.
I have a question about the data. Has it, in most places it says actual -2 +1, whatever. Have the bullets been adjusted based on?
I don't have mine in front of me.
It's right here.
If they haven't,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so each department goes in and updates, and so when TAPR came out, all of the CNI stuff wasn't updated.
and they adjusted that. So
yeah.
this was also adjusted.
Yes, but I think to Ms. Landry's point, there are some areas in there that don't have any data points. Is that correct? And so she's saying,
It's not relevant now.
correct.
Okay. But, so each bullet was adjusted if we were
Correct.
too high or too low?
Yeah.
Never too
Only
high,
time
too low.
if we jump up 5 points, then we will adjust the 5-year goal
Yeah.
as well. But if we drop, we don't adjust the 5-year.
Right.
We just put more energy to get to that mark.
Okay.
And so the goal is, you really should have 5-year goals anyway. So that way you're moving in the right direction and then you're adjusting year to year. The mistake, I think, sometimes we just start looking for ideas instead of just strategically saying, we're having a problem here, what are we going to do different? And so that's kind of what we did this last year. That's why you'll see plus, minus, or it'll say hit the goal. And typically, when you write a SMART goal, you're going up, 2 to 3%, maybe 4. Sometimes I know it's hard to digest that because sometimes people are like, well, we should jump up 15%.
It has to be realistic.
Correct. And so that's why we do it
Attainable.
that way. Yes, ma'am. And I think for us, and that's why Mr. Byer wanted us to come together on this, is that for us to all agree that our scorecard will drive us going forward. And I think that helps myself, it helps our staff at Central, because it makes the conversations much easier and you don't get lost in the stuff. And I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the stuff.
And we're going to stay to the left.
Yes. Wait, what? Wait, no, we can't. We got to be. Wait, this is
And
to the,
Mrs. Shelton, your question was to the left. It was to the left.
but we got to hang out in the right, according to this one right here. And to that point, I'm done with my presentation,
And
Mr. Byer.
I
Hope
just
this was-
appreciated the fact that we somehow got Kevin Bacon involved in this thing.
7 degrees.
7 degrees. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I do appreciate everybody coming in on a Monday when it was super cold out. And thanks to the staff that were here to help us out. So with that, we'll have item 4 adjournment, and the time is 7:12 PM.